Every day, before the sun rose and before the lights came on, Amira was already in the building. She moved quietly. Pushing her old mop across shiny floors, her shoes made no sound. Her face showed no emotion. She cleaned the glass walls, emptied the trash cans, and disappeared before the employees arrived. No one noticed her. They walked past her like she was part of the furniture, just a janitor, just the girl with the mop. But Amira noticed everything. She watched the way the managers talked loudly. Near the elevators, she memorized names, faces, and habits. She cleaned up after meetings and saw the papers they forgot to shred. She knew who stayed late and who stole ideas. She knew things even the CEO didn't know. Today was different. She stood outside the glass conference room, watching the executives laugh and shout inside. They were preparing for the big shareholders, meeting all the powerful men and women in expensive suits. One of them glanced at her and smirked. Someone forgot to clean the corner. He joked, pointing at a spotless area. The others laughed. Amira said nothing. She turned and walked away. Slowly, but her eyes were cold. Nobody knew the truth about her. Nobody remembered her name, but once, not so long ago, Amira had sat at that very table. She had been one of them, not a cleaner, not invisible, but respected, young, and brilliant. She had joined this company. Right after college, her ideas had saved the company millions. She worked day and night, smiling through the pressure. People called her the rising star. She was going to be someone important. She believed that until everything changed. One evening, after sending an idea that could change the company's future, her access was denied. She was called into the office the next day and accused of leaking data. No proof, no investigation. Just blame. Her badge was taken, her desk cleaned by someone else. She walked out in the rain with a box in her hands and no answers in her heart. Her mother, who had also worked at the company for years, couldn't handle the shock. She collapsed a week later and never fully recovered. Bills piled up. Amira tried to find work, but her name was blacklisted. People whispered. She was fired for security reasons. They never asked her side. Now, 2 years later, she was back, not as the genius employee they once praised, but as the janitor they ignored. Same building, same faces. But now, she was invisible. She took the job under a different name. No one cared to check. She wore a cap low on her head and kept her head down. She didn't need their respect now. She needed access. She needed time. As she mopped the floor that morning, she passed by the same office where she was once fired. The door was closed. She paused, her fingers brushing the wall. A quiet storm was building inside her. Every sweep of the mop was a memory. Every trash bag was a symbol of what they had thrown away: her dreams, her reputation, her voice. But now, she was watching, learning, waiting. She wasn't just cleaning, she was planning. And they had no idea that the girl with the mop was about to turn their world upside down. They laughed when she entered the building, but they would remember her when she left it, not as a janitor, but as the woman who shut down the whole company too. Years ago, Amira didn't wear a janitor's uniform. She wore a smart navy blue blazer with a name badge clipped proudly to her chest. It read, Amira Zaid Jr., Project Leader. People greeted her in the halls. They brought her coffee, asked for her advice, laughed at her jokes. She was only 24, but her mind was sharper than most senior managers. She built programs no one else could understand. She found solutions to problems the company had struggled with for years, and the CEO himself once called her the brain of the future. Her future was bright until someone decided to turn off the lights. It was during a major project involving new AI tech. She had stayed late every night, testing and writing code. Her team was small, but she carried them all. She submitted the final design on a Friday evening. It could have changed everything for the company. That weekend, something strange happened. On Monday morning, someone leaked part of the project online. It was Amira's work, but it was posted from an anonymous account. And instead of asking questions, the board made decisions. Security came to her desk. Her badge was taken. A manager she had trained looked her in the eye and said, "I'm sorry, but this is above me." That was all, just like that. Her career was over. They didn't listen to her, didn't check the cameras, didn't even ask her side. The project she worked so hard for was labeled compromised. Her name was sent across the company as a security risk. Within hours, her entire future collapsed. But the worst part was still coming. Her mother, Sophia Zaid, had worked at the company's cafeteria for over a decade. Everyone loved her, always smiling, always offering food with a kind word. When Sophia heard what happened to Amira, she collapsed on the kitchen floor. It was a stroke. She survived, but she could no longer speak properly, walk without help, or work again. Bills flooded their tiny apartment. Hospitals demanded money they didn't have. Amira tried getting new jobs, but everywhere she went, they asked, "Weren't you the one from Xenix Corp who leaked that AI prototype?" Her voice no longer mattered. Her name was poison. She was erased before she had the chance to explain. Then one night, sitting beside her mother's bed, she made a decision. She would return, not to beg, not to cry, but to take back what was hers. She applied for a janitor job under the name Amira S. No photo on file, no background checks. The company didn't care about janitors. She entered the same building again, only this time no one looked twice. No one knew the girl mopping the floor used to write million-dollar software for them. The only person who looked at her twice was Uncle Ray. He was an old security guard, the only one who had ever been kind to her. When she came in for the first time, he tilted his head. "You look familiar," he said. She only smiled. Must be a common face, but his eyes softened. He didn't say more, just nodded. That small moment meant everything to her. As the weeks passed, she memorized the new staff. Many of her old enemies had gotten promotions. The man who blamed her, Rohan Malik, now sat at the top floor. He smiled for the cameras, gave speeches, but Amira remembered how he had stolen her project idea right before the leak. She had shared it with him privately for review, and the next thing she knew, it was leaked online and she was fired. Now, she was watching him from the shadows, and she was collecting proof. Every evening after everyone left, she used her cleaning hours to scan the floors literally with a small hidden device in her mop handle. She accessed open ports left by lazy IT staff. She copied files, matched emails, followed trails, and day by day, the truth began to build. Amira wasn't just a janitor. She was now a ghost in their system, invisible but dangerous. She had no fancy clothes, no badge, no respect, but she had knowledge. And knowledge was the real power. She never spoke much, just did her work and kept her head down. But deep inside, a fire was growing, every night. Her mother's weak smile reminded her why she was doing this. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about truth, about making them all remember the girl they tried to erase. They had taken her future. Now she would take their company, and all she needed was the right moment to strike. It happened on a rainy Thursday morning. The building smelled like fresh coffee and wet shoes. People rushed inside, shaking off their umbrellas. In the corner of the lobby, Amira quietly cleaned the floor. As always, to them, she was still invisible. Just the janitor, just the girl with the mop. But today, something changed. Something small, something careless, something that would become the crack in the wall, up on the 4th floor. Mr. Rohan Malik, the man who once accused Amira, was running late. He had spilled tea on his notes and was panicking about his morning meeting. He rushed out of his office, holding his data pad and a pile of old documents. Behind him, papers fell like snowflakes. One of them landed right outside the janitor's closet. Amira spotted it as she walked past. At first, she almost ignored it, just another careless mess. But something about the shape caught her eye. It was a password sheet, handwritten. She picked it up and froze. It wasn't just a normal login sheet. It had admin-level credentials. Old, yes, but still active. And it was signed with Rohan's initials. She looked left, then right. No cameras, no footsteps. She slid the paper into her pocket and walked away calmly. That evening, when the building was empty and the lights dimmed, she sat alone in the janitor closet from a hidden compartment in her cleaning cart. She pulled out a small laptop. It wasn't connected to the company's Wi-Fi. It was connected to something deeper: the backup systems, the internal logs, the forgotten folders. She typed the first password. Access granted. Her heart beat faster. This was it. This was the mistake they made. They gave her a key without knowing. Within minutes, she was inside the very system that once kicked her out. She searched her old project folder, and there it was, her original AI design, marked confidential. But something was off. Her name was gone from the credits. In its place was Rohan's. Amira's hands trembled as she clicked through. She found the original submission email she had sent 2 years ago. Then, right after that, an email from Rohan to the board, claiming the project as his. Then, hours later, a fake tip about a data breach. Pointing at her, it wasn't a mistake, it was a setup. And the man who smiled on every company poster was a thief. But that wasn't all. As she dug deeper, she found more. Dozens of files, other names removed, other ideas stolen, employees quietly fired, pushed aside, replaced, and every time Rohan's career grew, she kept going. She downloaded files, copied voice recordings, screenshots, and video clips. She found a clip of Rohan joking about how janitors should stay in their lane, and another mocking Amira's breakdown during her firing. She stored them all carefully, labeled every file with names, dates, and proof. She was building a wall of truth, brick by brick, and no one even knew she was there. The next day, Rohan walked past her in the hallway. He didn't even glance at her. He was on a call, laughing. "Yeah, I'm heading to the shareholders' prep meeting now. They love my new AI idea." Amira stared at him with calm eyes. That idea was hers again. He was reusing her code under a new name. He was going to present it at the company's biggest event and take credit once more. But this time, Amira wouldn't let it happen. That night, she opened her laptop again. She wrote a simple message: "Before you speak tomorrow, you might want to watch this." She attached a 2-minute video showing the theft, the lies, the original emails. She sent it directly to the board. Using their private internal server, she knew what would happen. Some would ignore it, some would panic, but no one would be able to say they didn't know. She didn't stop there. She made copies on backup drives. She programmed a timer to leak it publicly. If anything happened to her, she was no longer the girl hiding in the shadows. She was becoming something else. They thought she was weak, broken, forgotten, but she was more dangerous now than ever before, and it all started with one mistake. One password, one careless drop. Amira looked in the mirror that night, not as a janitor, not as a victim, but as a storm waiting to strike. The day of the big meeting had arrived. The top floor of the company was buzzing. Executives rushed through the hallways, fixing ties and checking notes. Assistants ran in and out of rooms, balancing coffee trays and printed reports. The shareholders' meeting was the biggest event of the year. It decided who got promoted, who got bonuses, who got power, and this time, everyone believed Rohan Malik would become the company's next phase. Down in the basement level, Amira cleaned the supply closet for the cameras. She had made sure to be seen in the usual places, doing usual things. She wore her janitor uniform, head down, acting tired and unnoticed. But inside her pocket, she carried a flash drive, and in her chest, her heart was steady. She had already sent the files to the board. She knew they had received them. But not one person had replied. Not one message, not one warning. She wasn't surprised. People in power don't act until the fire touches their own feet, so she decided to light that fire herself. At 10:32 a.m., she took off her gloves and placed the mop gently against the wall. She straightened her back, wiped her hands on a cloth, and walked toward the elevator. A receptionist glanced at her and frowned. "Janitor access is limited," the woman said. Without even making eye contact, Amira kept walking. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in and pressed the button. For the top floor, the doors closed slowly as the elevator rose. Amira looked at her reflection in the mirror panel. Her uniform was clean but simple. Her hair was tied back. Her eyes sharp, no fear, no doubt. She had lost everything once. She had nothing more to lose. The elevator stopped. The doors opened to a wide hallway with white marble floors and a wall of glass. The boardroom stood at the end, its doors closed. Voices echoing from inside, she began walking, each step louder than the last. A few employees noticed her, then stared, confused, uncomfortable. Some whispered, "Why is the janitor up here?" Others just watched silently. A junior assistant stepped in her path. "Excuse me, you're not allowed here," he said nervously. Amira didn't stop. She looked him in the eyes and whispered, "I used to run this floor," then walked past. Him, outside the boardroom, two security guards stood alert. One of them recognized her. It was Uncle Ray. His eyes widened slightly. Amira gave him the tiniest nod. He didn't stop her. He moved aside. She pushed open the boardroom doors. The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward her. Rohan paused mid-sentence, confused and annoyed. "Who let her in here?" he snapped. "This is a private." Amira stepped forward calmly and placed the flash drive on the table. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Before you continue," she said, "you might want to hear what I have to say." The CEO blinked. One of the board members leaned forward. "Who are you?" Another asked. Amira looked directly at Rohan. "You know exactly who I am." Murmurs spread across the room. Someone said her name softly. Someone else gasped. A woman whispered, "Isn't that the girl who was fired years ago?" "Yes," Amira said. "That's me." She picked up the remote from the table, clicked once. The projector screen behind her turned on, and a single sentence appeared. "Truth has entered the room." One by one, files began to play. Emails, audio clips, videos, screenshots. Clear, direct, and undeniable. It showed Rohan stealing her project. It showed him submitting her design as his own. It showed him laughing about her firing. It showed the board, ignoring her side. Rohan's face turned pale. He lunged for the projector. But one of the board members stopped him. "Sit down," the man said firmly. The entire room watched in silence as the final file played. Amira's original email to Rohan, where she had shared the code privately, time-stamped and untouched. The truth right there on screen. When the video ended, Amira looked at each of them. "You laughed when I was thrown out," she said quietly. "You didn't ask questions. You didn't care." Her voice never shook. "But I didn't come back for revenge." She paused. "I came back because I couldn't let you destroy more lives." The CEO finally stood up. He looked tired, embarrassed, and guilty. "Why didn't you come to us sooner?" he asked weakly. "I did," she replied. "You just never listened." And then she walked out, leaving the flash drive behind, leaving the room full of powerful people staring at each other in shame. Outside the boardroom, people stood frozen. In the hallway, no one laughed now. No one dared, because the girl with the mop had just brought the company to its knees. The flash drive was still on the table. The projector screen was frozen on Amira's final slide. No one in the room moved. No one spoke. Even the sound of the air conditioner felt too loud. Rohan Malik sat with his jaw clenched, hands shaking. Under the table, he tried to speak, but the words refused to come. He knew what everyone had just seen, and worse, he knew it was all true. The CEO slowly sat down, rubbing his temples. Board members whispered to each other, eyes wide with disbelief. How long has this been going on? Did we really ignore all of this? Are we liable? One of them picked up the flash drive like it was a burning coal. They plugged it into the main boardroom computer. More files appeared on the screen. Project theft evidence, wrongful termination orders, internal cover-up emails, board silence, logs each. Folder held proof. Each file opened a wound. One video showed a private meeting between Rohan and two executives. He laughed and said she was too smart for her own good. Better to cut her loose now. Another clip was a voice note from a former employee. She was the best we had, sir, but they fired her to protect Rohan. A hidden camera file revealed Amira leaving the building 2 years ago. Crying, her security badge was tossed into a trash bin by a smirking manager. The room full of powerful people was now full of shame. One by one, they lowered their heads. Each file told the story of a company built on silence, on lies, on betrayal. But there was more. As the final folder opened, a spreadsheet appeared on screen. Suppressed talent list. It showed names of 18 employees who were fired or demoted after speaking up. Beside each name was a code. Fraud, unstable, security risk, and beside Rohan's name. Promoted after every incident, the CEO stood up and slammed his hand on the table. "This is enough," he said. "This is criminal." But it was too late for words. The meeting had been live-streamed to internal shareholders. Amira had activated the stream right before she left the room. Everyone watching now knew the truth. Phones buzzed across the building. Social media started to flood. With leaks, hashtags like #justice for Amir and #corporate lies exposed began trending. Outside the building, a small group of reporters had already gathered. Someone had tipped them off. In the boardroom, Rohan stood up. "I want a lawyer," he said quickly, but no one answered him. Even his closest allies stepped away. He looked around and saw faces he used to command, now full of disgust. The CEO turned to security. "Escort Mr. Malik off the premises." Uncle Ray entered the room, calm as always. He didn't say a word. He simply gestured. Rohan walked out. No longer powerful, no longer respected, just a man who thought he would never fall. Outside, whispers turned into claps. Employees gathered near the glass hallway and watched as Rohan passed. No one said goodbye. No one even looked at him. And at the far end of the hall, standing quietly with her mop in hand, was Amira. She didn't smile. She didn't say anything. She just turned and walked the other way. Her job was not finished. Yet, back in the boardroom, emergency meetings began. The CEO called for a crisis team. Apologies were written, press statements prepared. But everyone knew this would not be fixed in a day. Or a week. It would take a complete transformation. And it had started because of one woman. Not a CEO, not a manager, not a powerful investor, but a former employee they had thrown away like trash. And she came back with the truth in her hands. Down in the janitor's office, Amira sat alone. She opened her personal laptop. On the screen was a message from an unknown sender. "Thank you, Amira. You gave us all courage." It was signed by one of the names on the suppressed talent list. Another followed, then another. All thanking her for doing what they couldn't. She didn't need an award. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted the company to face the truth, and it finally had. She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. Her eyes drifted to the mop, leaning against the wall. It had been her cover, her shield, her weapon. But now she didn't need it anymore because the secrets were no longer hidden. They were on the screen for the world to see, and the girl with the mop had become the voice of justice. The sun was setting behind the glass walls of the building. Golden light poured through the empty hallways. The atmosphere was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the silence that comes after an earthquake, when everything is still standing, but nothing is the same in the CEO's office. The lights were still on. The board members had left. The crisis team had gone home, exhausted. But one person remained, Amira. She sat across from the CEO, still wearing her janitor uniform, but holding no mop this time, just a simple folder in her hands. The CEO sat opposite her, eyes tired. He had aged 10 years in one day. And for the first time since she had known him, he looked human. "I owe you more than an apology," he said softly. Amira didn't nod. She didn't smile. She opened the folder, pulled out a document. It was her original project, planned and dated. "This was the future," she said. "And you let them throw it away." He looked at the paper, then at her. "Why didn't you fight back then?" Her voice was calm. "Because I was alone." She paused. "Because I believed you would eventually do the right thing." Another pause, but you didn't. The CEO leaned back in his chair. "I failed you," he admitted, "and I failed this company." Amira looked at the window. The sky was turning deep orange. People outside were leaving work. Some were still talking about the day's events. Others just walked in silence, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. She placed another paper on his desk. It was a printed email. Her resignation letter. He stared at it in surprise. "You're leaving?" She nodded. "I didn't come back for power." She looked at him, eyes steady. "I came to make you see the truth." The CEO looked down at the letter, then slowly pushed it back toward her. "I understand," he said. "But before you go, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead," she replied. He hesitated, then asked, "If we had given you your position back, would you have accepted it?" Amira thought for a long moment, then shook her head. "No," she said, "because the people who broke this company are still here." She stood up. "And I don't want to be part of rebuilding something if the foundation is still cracked." He nodded slowly. He didn't argue because he knew she was right. She turned to leave, but before walking out the door, she stopped, looked over her shoulder, and said the words that would stay with him forever. "Next time someone walks into your office, scared and alone, don't look at their badge." She pointed to her chest. "Look at their eyes." With that, she walked out downstairs. The entire staff had gathered in the lobby, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. They had heard everything. They had seen what she did, and now they were waiting to say goodbye. When Amira stepped out of the elevator, there was silence. Then one person began clapping, then another, and then the entire lobby filled with applause. Not the kind of applause for someone rich or famous, but for someone brave. Tears formed. In some people's eyes, even those who had once ignored her now looked at her with respect. A young intern stepped forward. He held out a small bouquet of flowers. "These are from all of us," he said nervously. "They're not much, but thank you." Amira took the flowers gently. Her voice softened. "You don't have to thank me," she said. "Just promise you'll never be silent when something is wrong." The crowd nodded. Some whispered her name like a prayer. She was more than just a janitor, more than a tech genius, more than a hero. She was hope as she walked out of the building for the last time. The wind blew softly. She looked up at the sky, and for the first time in a long time, she felt light. Not because justice had been served completely, but because she had spoken. She had acted. She had made them all listen. And her final words weren't just to the CEO. They were to every person who ever felt small, every worker who had been ignored, every soul who had been made invisible. She had reminded them that silence is not weakness, and truth doesn't stay buried forever. 2 weeks had passed since Amira walked out of the building, but her presence still echoed in every corner of the company. Her name was now spoken with respect, not pity, and the office where she once silently cleaned the floors now held her. Memory like a flame, Rohan Malik was gone, fired, investigated, and exposed. Several others were quietly removed too. The board was shaken. The image of the company cracked like glass. But something strange happened after Amira's truth came out. People started talking not in whispers, but with strength. Old employees reached out with ideas they were once afraid to share. New employees walked taller. Knowing their voice mattered now, the CEO sat in his office and stared at Amira's resignation letter every morning. He hadn't filed it, he couldn't, he kept it as a reminder, a symbol of the day he was forced to listen. The day silence broke and truth screamed loud enough to be heard. One morning, he called for an emergency meeting not of the board, but of the staff. The people who truly built the company. They all gathered in the large open hall. Engineers, designers, janitors, cafeteria workers, receptionists, interns. Everyone. There was no podium, no microphone. Just a chair in the center and the CEO standing in front of it. "I won't take much of your time," he began. "But I owe you all something that's long overdue, an apology." The room went quiet, he continued. This company was built on ideas, teamwork, and trust. But somewhere along the way, we stopped listening. He paused. We silenced voices that told the truth and protected voices that spoke lies. He looked around the room. And one woman wearing a janitor's uniform had more courage than all of us combined. There was a soft murmur of agreement. Some smiled, others looked down in guilt. "We can't change the past," he said, "but we can build a future where no voice is ignored again." He pulled out a small metal plaque and held it up. It read, "The Amira Zaid Center for Employee Truth and Protection." There was silence. Then light applause, then stronger clapping. Tears welled up in some eyes, not because of the plaque, but because finally someone was acknowledging what was wrong. The center would act as an open space where any employee, no matter the role, could raise concerns. Every complaint would be reviewed by a new ethics team, not hidden, not punished, but heard. New hiring policies were introduced. Old files were reopened, and some who were wrongly dismissed were called back with full honor. But Amira didn't return. She had already started something new, far away from the shiny building in a quiet community space. Amira sat in front of a whiteboard. Around her were young students, some still in college, some just learning coding for the first time. She was teaching them what no one had taught her: how to protect their ideas, how to build systems with honesty, how to speak up when things go wrong. A girl raised her hand and asked, "Miss Amira, were you scared when you exposed your company?" Amira smiled softly. "Yes, I was," she said. "Very scared." The girl blinked in surprise. "Then why did you do it?" Amira looked out the window for a moment before answering. "Because being scared is not the same as being weak." She turned back to the class. "I stayed quiet once, and it cost me everything." She touched her heart gently. "But when I spoke, I found my voice again." The students nodded, inspired and wide-eyed. They weren't just learning code. They were learning courage. Back at the company, things weren't perfect. Mistakes still happened. Deadlines were still stressful. But now, people looked each other in the eyes. Managers greeted janitors by name. Doors stayed open. Meetings were more honest, and every year, on the same date, Amira exposed the truth. The company held a small ceremony, not fancy, not forced. Just a quiet moment where someone would stand and say, "We remember not just her name, but her bravery, her sacrifice, her silent strength, because one janitor had done what no executive dared to." She cleaned more than just floors. She cleaned a system full of lies and reminded them all what real power looked like.